All right, hello there, AP World students. This is DBQ Advanced Tactics. These are some new and kind of updated things Mr. Brown has learned about the DBQ from my training at the College Board. I don't expect a whole lot of new stuff here, and this is going to be sort of like take notes at your discretion. I think there's definitely going to be some things I would really prefer you to write down and to know for the future, and I'm pretty confident, too, this will be the last sort of teaching I do of DBQ skills. I think after this, I will have taught you all I know of how to write effective DBQs and how to kick butt on the AP test. And, I mean, we still will do DBQs throughout the year, but I'll start now changing the focus to the SAQs and the LEQ. All right, advanced tactics. Let's do this. So, I might have gotten some of this information wrong at the beginning of the year, and I apologize for that. And a big reason why I got some of this wrong is because, you know, when the pandemic started last year, they changed the AP test last year, and so they've now made it quite clear to me exactly what the expectations are this year. This will be the AP test, and they've also made it so clear that everything on this slide will happen. If we're still online in May, they will give you an online test of this format. If we are in person, the in-person test will be in this format. The AP World Test is definitely one of the longest tests. I think if you... a lot of the foreign language tests, there's like this whole speaking bit, which takes a lot of time. But as far as like sheer content of writing and stuff to do, AP World's pretty much the winner. So we're on hard mode, but we might as well get this out of the way so the rest of your high school career is easy mode. And something I didn't realize, the multiple choice is 40% of your final score, which does seem like a pretty big chunk. But my understanding from talking to other AP World teachers is that multiple choice, like I could drill multiple choice all day with you kids, and it wouldn't change the scores that much. I think that if we all lock in our essay writing skills, you can end up with, 60% of the total score. And if you remember, the passing score is usually somewhere between 60 and 70%. So I think essays are the way to knock it out of the box. And the largest essay, of course, the DBQ, 25%. The LEQ is only 15%. I thought that was quite low. So anyway, I'll teach you guys stuff about how to write the short essays and the LEQ later. And I also thought it was kind of interesting that the DBQ and the LEQ are sort of given to you together in one time block, and you're given 100 minutes. And the sort of recommended use of your time by the DBQ or by the College Board is you put an hour into the DBQ and you put 40 minutes into the LEQ. But honestly, that 100 minutes is yours to divide at your discretion. So anyway, I think this stuff is kind of interesting. This is how it's going to work out on the AP test. All right, moving on. Okay, so this is now where I'm going to start to redefine how I taught some of the stuff with DBQ writing. So I told you kids that context was simply just talking about the subject in the DBQ. If the DBQ is about Pokemon, all you do is tell me about Pokemon. If the DBQ is about the Black Death, all you do is tell me about the Black Death. I need this to be a little more direct from now on. And the way that the College Board grader taught me to teach this is imagine you're watching your favorite TV show and you're like kind of in binge mode. And as you start up the next episode, there's always the previously on Game of Thrones or previously on Stranger Things. And then there's like maybe like 30 seconds or less of clips from the previous show to sort of catch up the person who maybe they like forgot some of the things that occurred earlier in the season, or they forgot some of the stuff in the last episode. And almost all the time, you kids, I'm sure you just skip those previously on your favorite show clips. But that's the idea we want you to do with the context here. Okay, like if you're going to give me context about the Black Death, I want you to maybe say, previously on world history, pandemic diseases have been a problem all over the world. But Recently, in Europe, the trade routes have opened along the Silk Road, and new people are coming in like never before. Okay? So you're not summarizing the entire history of pandemics, the entire history of trade. You're just sort of giving me the snapshots that I'll need to know in understanding the topic that you're going to teach me about in the DBQ. So I think that's the best way to think about it. Another thing that I absolutely recognize I did not teach, and I should emphasize this from you now on, is the context should expose the reader to both the topic and the subject of the DBQ. And every one of my DBQs has sort of had this relationship. Like it was Pokemon and world culture, Black Death and Christianity, Mongols and brutality. So make sure you're hitting both topics in the context. And I mean, the context of brutality, the context of global culture, that could just be an easy definition. But the historical subject, the historical topic, that's going to be something that I would like to have a little bit of understanding of where we're at in the history of the world and just bring us right into the DBQ. All right. So, yeah, here's an example I did here. The context for brutality of the Mongols. So, good context would look something like this. The Mongols brutalized their way through Asia once Genghis Khan united the tribes. And then this introduction would go on, and it would tell me maybe a little bit about how Genghis Khan united the tribes, but right there, move it right into where we're at in the world, where the Mongols are taking over and slaughtering people and doing evil stuff. Another sentence that would really be an awesome in the context would be, the tactics and warfare skills of the Mongols are famous for their brutality. They killed so many people, they trampled people to death, their horses went everywhere. Like you're really giving me that direct focused context. But really bad context for this DBQ would be if you're talking about the Song Dynasty. Okay, and I understand that the Mongols took down the Song Dynasty, but they're not the topic of this DBQ. Like, the context has to be focused. It has to reference the things in the prompt. But then here's another one. The Mongols were horse people. Like, well, yeah, thanks. Maybe that can be... But it's not focused enough. Like, I need to know right off the bat how wild and crazy the Mongols are. If you said that the Mongols trampled their way across Asia, then maybe now we're getting more of the brutality universe here. And then this other one, people have been brutal all over history. We don't need that either. We need to get on point with our topic and our subject of the DBQ. So connecting those two concepts together, especially through the context, is what I'm demanding you kids do from now on. Okay, so now let's talk about some thesis stuff here. And I think I've taught thesis really well, but here I am I'm sharing what I learned from my College Board trainer here. The thesis must say the period of history and the region of the world affected. And I'm pretty confident I could say almost every thesis isn't going to say the whole world. Maybe there's going to be some that will be the entire world, but usually there'll be some regions you can focus on. So, your thesis has got to have those organized categories. I always taught you kids to come up with 3 ways to categorize your documents, but my grader said that you're fine if you just do 2 categories. Kids can do 3, but he really didn't recommend kids do 4. He said usually the people who write DBQs for the College Board are going to have kind of 2 or 3 categories in mind. Not necessarily that kids have to follow those categories, but that's just sort of what's expected of you. A good example from the Mongol DBQ. This is just a quality thesis from the Mongol DBQ. The Mongols of the 13th century caused massive destruction throughout the Asian world through their use of vicious massacres and an unrelenting desire to conquer the world. And the assumption is I'm going to see a whole paragraph where you connect documents to vicious massacres, and I'm going to see a whole paragraph about unrelenting desire to conquer the world. And I think I've drilled this into you all pretty well, so there's not a whole bunch of different things to learn from this slide. Okay, so if you want to get a perfect score on the DBQ, the College Board wants you to use information not found in the DBQs themselves, okay? You have to prove to your grader that you know additional knowledge of history outside of the documents that are presented to you. And look, if you somehow get a DBQ about traders along the Silk Road and none of the documents are Marco Polo, I would love it. Like, you would immediately win the game if you reference Rustician's The Travels of Marco Polo in that DBQ. If you just pull that out of your head and throw it in as the document 8 that came out of my mind, that would be amazing. But the College Board isn't demanding that you memorize documents from all the different periods of history. But the College Board does want you to show them that you have learned about this content of the past and that you can connect it to the DBQ from straight out of your head. So this is something I'm going to start grading on, and I'll show you an example of kind of what I'm expecting on the next slide here. So, and a lot of the history teachers that I've talked to, and also my College Board trainer, they said that it's just better if the kids get this kind of extra knowledge out of the way early, because the College Board, like the way that they grade the DBQs, they really try to look for these extra points as early on as they possibly can. So if you can, put it in your second paragraph, or really like your first body paragraph, to utilize outside evidence and outside historical facts. Alternatively, you can use it. You bring in more than just one outside evidence or outside fact, and just fill up your DBQ with all the knowledge you got, and there's just more opportunity for you to get points. Because also my College Board grader made it very, very clear that students never lose points for writing wrong things. Students only gain points. So do it multiple times. But anyway, here's an example of how you could have gotten this sort of extra knowledge point. And I think a lot of you kids could have very easily done this, because in my lesson that I filmed about the Mongols, I told you kids all kinds of extra historical facts about how crazy and evil the Mongols were. And if you had brought in any of that information into a paragraph relating to the viciousness of the Mongols, this would have been a way to get these points that the College Board is looking for. So, for example, if this bit right here was included in one of your DBQs, the vicious violence from the Mongols can be seen in their sacking of Baghdad, where they destroyed the House of Wisdom and threw all the books in that great library into the nearby rivers, making them first run black with the ink from the books and then red from the blood of all the people that were killed. Like, this little line right here is outside evidence. And look, it's not being cited, it's not being sourced. That's okay. If you can cite and source it, well, hat off to you, good sir, madame. But just bringing in stuff that you've learned from me or learned from the book, that's what the College Board is expecting out of you. So I'm going to start holding you kids accountable to do some of this in DBQs in the future. Okay, and now this is, I stole this right off my grader guy. So when using documents, it's best to avoid things like document A says, document X says, document B says. Instead, you write something like, the author of document C expresses his support and admiration for the suffragettes. And then, so you're just describing what the author believes. I showed you a lot of this in the Marco Polo citations. We're citing Rustician says, or Polo relates that. So, try to figure out who the author is. And then another point, too, is once you summarize a document or once you quote a document, your reader wants to... The reader wants to know why you quoted that. Your reader is saying in their mind, so what? Like, why did you cite this? Why is this important? And you have to connect it to your argument every time. And this is something that I've definitely emphasized throughout the year. If your citation, if your use of a document does not connect to your thesis, your main point, it's not going to be clear to the grader. So always, always, always connect it to the sub point. So, like for example, in the Mongol one, it's the sub point could be the violence and the massacres that the Mongols did, and another sub point could be their desire to take over the world, but then also try to bring it back to the brutality expressed by the Mongol Empire. All right, and then I think I've brought this up a little bit, especially in the Marco Polo lesson, but for at least 3 documents in your DBQ, you must reference the author's point of view, the author's audience, or bigger historical events happening around the document through your analysis of the document. So it's sort of like you're not even talking about the words in the document. You're not talking about like the content. You're trying to understand the purpose of the greater reason why the document was written. And then another way you could think about it is ask yourself the question, why did this author put pen to paper? Why did this author go out of their way to stop whatever they were doing in their life 500 years ago and actually write something down? Okay? Like, for example, in the Marco Polo book, Rustician and Marco Polo, they didn't want to create a historical account of Asia. They wanted to write a book that they could sell that would get people excited. So, of course, Marco Polo is going to be like, well, I think I heard about some dog people. Let's put that in there. That's something exciting. So, trying to analyze that level of the author is something that DBQ graders really, really, really love to see. And then another thing you could always bring up too is how do the author's traits help make your argument? In many sources we're going to see they're going to be written by priests. And if you're a Catholic priest, you're going to have a certain frame of mind into how you're going to experience events around the world and sort of maybe the bias you're going to put into how you interpret the things you see and the world around you. So really try to critically think about the author, the audience, and the bigger events happening during that time period that'll really give you a reflection of the purpose of the document. All right, so now let's move on to conclusion stuff. So I think I've mentioned this before, and my DBQ grader also really, really emphasized this as well. Conclusions should be very short and simply restate your thesis. I said in the past it should be a 1-sentence conclusion. My example here is 3 sentences, but I mean, it's not a very deep conclusion, but this would be a very good conclusion that I'm hoping to see from you kids in the future. I'm going to officially undo my earlier rule of Brown doesn't care about conclusions, because now I do. I will require this from now on. I'm going to hold you accountable to give me a conclusion, but the conclusion should not be a big, challenging, stressful thing from your mind. It should just be a few short sentences where you're not bringing up anything new. You're simply restating the thesis. So a good conclusion from the Mongol Brutality DBQ would look something like this. The Mongols of the 13th century used violence and terror to achieve their empire. They conquered the world through unimaginable brutality in order to unite the world under their terms. The extent of which they brutalized the world was unprecedented, and it would be difficult for anyone to claim that their violence made the world a better place. So using this kind of language at the end of your DBQ is really great, because my AP grader said that when they're grading DBQs every summer, they only look for a thesis in 2 places. They obviously look for it at the end of the first paragraph, and they also will give students points if they see a good thesis at the very, very end of their entire essay. And so he said that this is kind of a good way to, like, give yourself 2 options to get those thesis points. Because some kids might, like, phrase some things wrong in their original thesis, and by giving you the chance to sort of say it one more time at the end, usually your thoughts are a little more better put together. You've utilized all the documents by that point, so you have a very good understanding of how you're phrasing the argument. And he says more than often he gives points for thesis by reading kids' conclusions. So this is something we're absolutely going to do from now on. All right, yeah, and that's it for me. This is all the new stuff about DBQ writing. So keep all this in mind, and I look forward to seeing you use some of these new skills in the Ottoman Empire DBQ. We're going to write this week. All right, peace out.